Okay, we're good, and I'm almost crying. Holy crap, Jesus Christ. I never thought I would cry for YouTube. Now I have to put it in the thumbnail. So I was scrolling through my Russian tech tree and I was thinking, what could be a good tier 4 aircraft that I could grind with? First of all, I tried of course playing the Yak 3, which at Battle Rating 6.0 is kind of fucked. This thing can't really dive on jets because it breaks its wings, so take that one out. The Yaks, I don't like the Yaks. I just don't really like the Yaks. I just can't play them for whatever reason. They all seem the same to me. Even though they have very low battle ratings, they are still not my preferred aircraft. I-185, never learned how to play them, can't play them for shit. Then I looked at the Lavochkins, and here's the thing. I've always had a love-hate relationship with the Lavochkins. Whenever I played them myself, I could not figure out the playstyle. I would always lose, right? But whenever I played against them, no matter what I did, they would always kill me. So I spent some time with the La-7, given it's a pretty low battle rating. One whole battle rating lower than the next model, which apparently only adds one extra cannon, and of course changed out the swags for some better cannons. This thing is fucking awesome. The La-7 sits at rank 4 and has a battle rating of 4.7 in realistic mode. It is armed with two 20mm Schwag cannons with 340 rounds total ammunition load and a total burst mass of 2.30 kilograms per second. The indicated top speed from the stat card is 677 km per hour, although you are rarely ever going to reach those speeds, especially at the height that it indicates. More on that a little bit later, you're going to understand why. Now the La-7 has a radial engine, which means this thing does not have water cooling, and as such makes the thing actually quite resistant to damage. This coupled with the La-7 pretty much being get into battle and get Krimsk or Kursk Simulator 2017, you are going to have plenty of airfields and small enough maps that you should never really have to worry too much about engine damage. And as such, it actually allows you to do stuff that you wouldn't otherwise do in other aircrafts. Stuff like sitting on the tail of a bomber, trying to shoot it down. It doesn't really matter if you take a couple of hits to the engine, you can easily make it back to base. Now the armor of the La-7 is nothing special. You got the seat, which is 8.5mm thick, bulletproof glass on the front at 55mm thick, and 66 on the back. It's actually quite nice that you have protection for the pilot's head from behind, which means pilot snipes in this thing are actually quite rare. Now some of the modifications you can unlock to actually increase the thickness of both the front and the rear armor plate, so the seat and the front bulletproof glass, but I would not recommend it since it won't really add any more survivability to you, but will add some weight, and we've seen before what weight can do to your aircraft, right? Now the biggest selling point of the La-7 is actually its pretty low battle rating, and at battle rating 4.7 you only face up to 5.7 fighters, which means you will occasionally go up against Mustangs and some higher tier Spitfires, but you will never face anything 6.0 and up. This thing is awesome at the battle rating it's at. And better yet, it can actually go down to 3.7, where it just absolutely seal clubs everything. Now the guns are mounted in the nose and fire synchronized through the propeller, which is great. They can actually be, at least from the mounting standpoint, they are quite accurate. They won't spread as much as wing mounted guns, and you don't have to worry as much about the gun convergence, right? Problem is, these are Schwags. These are the same cannons you get on your rank 1 fighters. I think there are some rank 1 fighters with 20mm cannons. And let's just say they aren't very good. In fact, I would have to say that these cannons are the biggest drawback of this whole aircraft. Whilst you do get 340 rounds, 170 rounds per gun, they go away very, very quickly. These trucks have a very high fire rate for what they are, which, okay, can be a good thing. However, they also have a very low muzzle velocity from what I can feel, and as such it can feel rather difficult to actually get shots on target. And even when you do, due to the current mechanics of how damage models work, these 20s just don't do much damage, I have to say. I have found myself putting an entire magazine right into the wing of a bomber and not getting anything. Or perfectly yet, better yet, when you get a perfect dogfight and you line up your guns perfectly and you get a central gear crit through the top of the aircraft. I have no idea how Guardian's damage models work. Now I want to touch on a little bit about the Russian bias myth and why this thing is so effective and so feared. I'm pretty sure if you've played the Americans and the British, even the Germans, actually pretty much anything except the Japanese, you will have learned to fear this thing. And why? It's versatility. Here's the thing with Russian bias in general. Both the Russian aircraft and Russian tanks aren't really the best at anything in particular. That's not what they are. What these vehicles are very good at everything. Take for example your P-51 Mustang. What is it good at? High altitude performance, staying fast. Problem is, that's all it's good at. If you are caught at low altitude, if you're caught in a dogfight, you die, right? Because the aircraft is at a disadvantage, given by its innate abilities. The La-7 is not quite that way. It is not the fastest aircraft, but it is very, very, very fast, especially at low altitudes. It is not the best turning aircraft, but at high speeds, this thing can turn extremely well. It is not the best rolling aircraft, but it rolls just decently enough that you can get your guns on target. It doesn't have the best guns, but you have decently enough amount of ammo, and you have the aircraft giving you the ability to actually put yourself where you need to be, right behind the enemy, good flying. It doesn't really matter that the guns aren't perfect, you can always create a situation where you can use those guns effectively. Oh, and another thing I almost forgot to mention, this thing is quite damage resistant. It can, by itself, already pretty easily evade any boom and zoomers, so stuff like P-51s. And not only that, it's also, well, it survives single passes, let's say. The wings are decently sturdy, the engine is a radial engine, which by itself makes it much more sturdy than inline engines. And as such, you rarely actually die in this aircraft. In fact, when I started playing this aircraft out stock first, out of 10 battles, out of 10 deaths, out of my first 10 deaths, 8 were due to my own mistakes, crashing, stuff like that, running out of fuel, getting killed by AA, rather than actually getting killed by enemies. That's how powerful this thing actually can be in the right hands. So what was I talking about with the high altitude performance and this thing not really being able to reach its top speed at high altitudes? Well, the La-7, as so many other Russian fighters, are low altitude aircraft. You're not really supposed to go high altitude with them, and this is actually the biggest benefit with them. You see, in real life, the aircraft who would have the highest altitude would generally win. This doesn't really apply to War Thunder. The game meta in War Thunder is low to medium altitude. Yes, you can go to high altitude and you can probably survive the match and you can draw it out, but it's not the most effective way to actually grind through the tech tree. In fact, all you P-51 pilots probably know, the P-51 by itself is an amazing aircraft. But you just spend a lot of time climbing, a lot of time just flying around, not doing anything. Rarely during the match you actually get to fire your guns. And even when you do, those 50s tend to have problems actually taking down stuff in one pass. The La-7, however, it does not care. It behaves best up to around 3,500 meters, that's about the maximum I ever climb. It gets right into the enemy face very, very quickly. In fact, if you do a very shallow climb, you can actually intercept the enemy whilst they are still climbing. The overall ability of this aircraft is just absolutely amazing. It is fast, it is well turning at high speeds, not so much at low speeds. I do have to warn you about this. The biggest drawbacks of this aircraft is when you go below about 350-400 km per hour. Then this thing turns into a brick. It just doesn't want to turn anymore. Above that, however, about 400 km per hour is right in the sweet spot. At 400 km per hour, in a prolonged dogfight, like a descending dogfight, so you do need some altitude to at least have some energy in the bank. But if you have some altitude, if you have some energy in the back, and you can extend the dogfight to occur always at 400 km per hour, this thing can actually outturn Spitfires with flap control. I have survived a dogfight against a Spitfire Mark 9 and I've won. At speed, this thing turns extremely well. It's an aircraft that's actually so good in the right hands, you don't really need too many tips. It's stay low, stay fast, have about 2 km altitude, 3 km altitude maximum, don't go above that, don't chase down the enemy at 5 km altitude, let him come down to you. If they dive on you, pretty easy, just evade and you trap them. This thing has awesome energy retention, especially in the vertical. I surprised an incredible amount of people who, for example, dived on me, especially Spitfires, since they lose their energy quite quickly at speeds. Especially Spitfires, they dive on you, they try to turn fight you, but you have the speed advantage, and you wreck them. Make them overshoot, use those 20s. Even if you don't kill them outright, Spitfires are quite vulnerable to wing damage, and when you hit one of the wings, when you hit some of the elevators, they just lose all of the turning ability, making them a very easy kill. Now, one thing I do have to warn you about in the La-7 if you're going to play it is to engage in a multi-aircraft dogfight by yourself. The La-7 one-on-one is one of the most powerful aircraft I've ever flown, alright? This thing, in the right hands, with the right pilot, in the right situation, can kill almost anything it faces. Even if it's 5.7, right? P-51s, if you can get them to altitude, you wreck them. P-47s, you wreck them. Spitfires, you wreck them. But that only applies when you're facing one aircraft at a time. Because that's really where the strength of this aircraft is. What I've mentioned before, being good at everything. If you face a Spitfire, and you see that you cannot dogfight them anymore, just run away. You're faster than the Spitfires. That's how you win against Spitfires. Use your energy against Spitfires. Use your energy and your speed. Against American aircrafts, you cannot outrun them. Actually, in some degrees you can. Most of the American aircraft you can actually outrun only at low altitudes though, not at high altitudes. But either you can get them low and have the advantage there, outrunning them there, or you can simply dogfight them. The Americans have no chance dogfighting this thing. Against the Germans, pretty much the same thing. You can outturn B-409s, you can outturn Fokker 90s, and you are faster than the B-409s at low altitudes. And this is really why people think that this thing is overpowered and where the whole Russian bias theme came from. No matter what aircraft you're in, there's always going to be situations that your aircraft cannot handle. Spitfires can't really handle speed. P-51s can't really handle dogfights. Actually, the entire American tech tree in general can't really handle dogfights. B-49s is the same thing. German tech tree can't handle dogfights. This thing, it can handle anything you throw at it. Where I found this thing to really downfall is when you have to face two aircraft that fill different roles. For example, if you face a P-51 and a Spitfire at the same time. See, this is where the problems really start, because here's the thing. You can't outrun the P-51, but you can't really outturn the Spitfire either, unless you have proper flap control and you're only up against him alone. And even then, I don't really recommend dogfighting with Spitfires. Don't do it. If you have the speed advantage, use the speed advantage. But when you're in a situation where you have an aircraft that's faster than you, an aircraft that turns better than you, there's not much you can do. There really is not much you can do. Unless the enemy is very stupid, you're guaranteed to die. So, what is the final verdict on the La-7? Well, if you are currently grinding through the Russian tech tree, or if you have this thing and you haven't really figured it out yet, give it a try. I do have to say one thing though, I don't like the guns. I think the guns are really the biggest drawback of this aircraft. And if you can afford it and don't mind facing a higher opposition, I would go for the La-7B. The La-7B I've flown it a bit. I've aced it actually, flying this thing. The La-7B has pretty much the same performance as the La-7, so the aircraft performance itself doesn't change too much, but the guns are freaking amazing. You actually get to kill what you shoot at. And for anyone fighting against the La-7, get yourself someone that complements your role. If you're in an American aircraft, stick close to some Spitfires. If you're in a Spitfire, stick close to some American aircraft. 2-on-1, this thing has no chance, right? 1-on-1, just stay high. If, however, you are facing 1-on-1 at low altitudes, yeah, you're screwed. I'm sorry, mate. There's nothing you can do. So, this has been the long-awaited review. Well, not really long-awaited, because nobody really cares about the La-7 anymore. but let's just say I haven't really done a proper review in a while. By the way, I like the webcam, just intermission every now and then, I don't know. I've read the feedback of the last video where I used the webcam, and I'm definitely not going to use webcams anymore during gameplay, but you know, maybe just in intro bits and transitions and stuff like that. We'll see, we'll see. Anyways, lads, if you've enjoyed this video, do give it a like, it always helps out the channel quite a bit. Share it around with your friends on Discord and stuff like that. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, what you think about the Russian bias machine. And yeah, as always, just hopefully you enjoyed this video. As always, lads, my name is MikeGoesBoom, and thank you for watching.
You can lift your head up to the sky, take a deeper breath and give it time. You can walk the path among the lines with your shattered frame of mind. Or instead you could always stay. We can wait right here and play until somehow you can find